The screams were deafening. Lockers slammed, feet pounded down the hallways, and Michael Reynolds could barely hear his own breath over the chaos. He didn't think. He just ran, toward the gunfire, toward the children. 3 little ones, maybe 6 or 7 years old, were frozen in the middle of the playground, too terrified to move. Michael threw himself between them and the danger, using his own body as a shield. One of the shooters turned, raising his weapon. Instinct took over. Michael rushed him, tackled him to the ground, and wrestled the gun away. Seconds later, sirens screamed as police stormed the scene. But instead of relief, Michael felt cold steel tightening around his wrists. Handcuffed, forced to his knees. No one asked questions. Blood on his uniform, children crying behind him, cameras flashing. Someone shouted, "He assaulted the suspect." And just like that, the man who risked his life was treated like the enemy. As Michael sat in the back of the police cruiser, stunned, he heard the faint voice of a child he'd just saved. "Why are they taking him?" He didn't have an answer. And that was just the beginning. If this story already has you on edge, don't miss what's coming next. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a real story that shakes, moves, and inspires. These aren't just videos. They're voices that need to be heard. Join us. You belong in this truth. Michael Reynolds never planned on being a hero. He didn't see himself that way. At 38, he was just trying to piece together a life that had been broken in more ways than he could count. He lived alone in a modest apartment in a quiet part of Indianapolis. His mornings started with black coffee and silence. The walls were bare, except for a single photo, him in uniform, holding his newborn daughter, Emily. That photo was over 10 years old. Emily lived with her mother now. Michael saw her every other weekend, if Sarah allowed it. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. In the military, he was Sergeant Reynolds. Disciplined, precise, reliable. But war changed him. After a mission gone wrong, Michael returned home with more than physical scars. The nightmares never stopped. The guilt never let go. Eventually, he was discharged, labeled unfit due to PTSD. Civilian life felt foreign. He bounced between jobs until he landed one as a security guard at a local elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him a sense of purpose. Protecting others was something he knew how to do. He kept his head down, did his work, and stayed invisible. Teachers respected him. Kids called him Mr. Mike. Some parents didn't even know he existed. But every single day, he watched the playground like a hawk. He scanned every entrance, every parked car, every stranger, not out of paranoia, but duty, because he knew what could happen when people let their guard down. More than anything, Michael wanted Emily to be proud of him. He missed her laugh, her silly stories, the way she used to run into his arms. Now, their conversations were short, guarded, controlled by Sarah and her new husband David, who Michael quietly resented. He never caused drama, never fought back. He thought if he kept proving he was steady, trustworthy, reliable, maybe one day he'd be allowed back into his daughter's life in a real way. That was the hope that got him out of bed each day. And when the day of the shooting came, that hope was still burning quietly inside him. Michael never dreamed of medals or parades. He didn't want applause. What he craved was peace, the kind that didn't come with a uniform, orders, or the weight of other people's lives in his hands. He just wanted to be enough for his daughter. That was his dream. Every Friday before he picked up Emily, he cleaned his car like it was sacred. He'd wipe the dashboard, vacuum the seats, buy her favorite snacks, grape juice and animal crackers. Those weekends were everything. For 48 hours he wasn't a veteran with baggage. He was just Dad. He wanted more of that. He wanted stability. To be a real presence in her life again, not just a visitor. Maybe even regain shared custody someday. But he knew it would take time, patience, and trust. So he never pushed. Never gave Sarah a reason to doubt him. He showed up on time. Never raised his voice. Said thank you even when it hurt. At the school, he became a quiet fixture. The principal once told him, "I sleep easier knowing you're at that front door." That meant something. Michael believed that if he kept showing up, kept being consistent, life would reward him. Maybe not with grand victories, but with moments that mattered. He imagined going to Emily's dance recitals, helping with homework, being introduced as her father without hesitation. He didn't want to be perfect, just present. He had started a small notebook, just a collection of thoughts, lessons he'd want Emily to know someday. Things like, bravery isn't loud, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. He hoped she'd read it one day when she was older, maybe even understand him better. That dream kept him grounded. When the nightmares came, when the weight of his past threatened to crush him, he'd picture Emily's face, her crooked smile, the dimple on her left cheek. That was enough to pull him through. But even the most carefully built dreams can crack without warning. The cracks began subtly. During a parent night at the school, Michael saw Emily from afar, holding her mother's hand. She pointed at him, smiling, but Sarah pulled her away quickly. Then David stepped in, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder like he belonged there. Michael stayed in the background, swallowing the ache in his throat. He told himself it was fine, that this was just part of the journey, but something inside him had shifted. The dream was still alive, but now it felt fragile. A week after that parent night, Michael received a call from the school's administration. There had been a complaint. A parent claimed he had stared at their child in a way that made them uncomfortable. No specifics, no context, just a formal write-up and a warning to remain professional at all times. Michael sat in his car for nearly an hour after that meeting, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He wasn't angry. He was shattered. That job was the last thing keeping him afloat, and now even that felt like it could slip away for no reason at all. He didn't tell anyone. Not Sarah, not Emily. He didn't want to give Sarah any more ammunition to keep Emily at a distance. Instead, he smiled through the weekend like nothing had happened, though every time Emily laughed, he felt further from her world. Then came the worst moment yet. It was a rainy Thursday. He stood under the school awning, watching as parents arrived to pick up their kids. When David pulled up, Emily ran toward him with her backpack bouncing. Michael gave a small wave. Emily paused, returned it timidly, but Sarah quickly opened the passenger door and called her inside. As the car pulled away, Michael caught a glimpse of Sarah glancing back in the mirror, just for a second. That look wasn't fear. It was dismissal. It was final. That night, something in him cracked. He sat at his kitchen table with a beer he didn't drink, staring at his notebook. He flipped through the pages of advice he'd written for Emily. Stay kind, even when it hurts. Real strength is knowing when to ask for help. And for the first time, he didn't believe a word of it. What was the point of trying to be good when the world treated you like a threat? When people only saw your scars, not the healing underneath? He barely slept. The next morning, his hands trembled as he tied his shoes. Every noise in the hallway felt louder, sharper. The school didn't feel safe anymore, not for him. The trust he had built, the quiet progress he made, it all felt like it could be erased with one misunderstanding, one rumor, one mistake. He was fighting for a life that didn't seem to want him back. And in that space of doubt and silence, the old thoughts, the dark ones, started creeping in again. It was a Monday morning like any other. Cloudy, slow, routine. Michael arrived at the school before sunrise, as always. He did his standard checks, gates, perimeter, security footage. Everything seemed normal, but as he stood by the entrance, watching the kids arrive with backpacks too big for their bodies and smiles too pure for this world, he felt a knot in his chest he couldn't explain. By 9:12 a.m., the day shattered. The first bang didn't sound like a gunshot, more like something heavy falling. But the second one left no doubt. Screams followed, shrill, panicked, real. Then came the silence between the next round of shots, that terrible silence. Michael ran, down the hallway, past the library. He turned the corner and froze for a heartbeat. A teenager, barely more than a boy, was holding a gun, yelling incoherently. Kids scattered. A teacher shielded a group of first graders behind a door, but 3 children had broken away, too scared to move, frozen in the middle of the playground. Michael didn't think. He sprinted outside, reached the kids, threw his arms around them. "Stay down. Don't move," he whispered, voice steady but trembling. The shooter stepped onto the pavement. Michael stood up, hands out, trying to de-escalate. But when the teen pointed the gun toward the children again, something primal took over. Michael lunged. The struggle was fast and brutal. He slammed the teen to the ground, the gun skidding across the concrete. Adrenaline blurred everything. He used force. He had to. He pinned the boy, yelling for help, for someone to call the cops. When the sirens finally arrived, Michael raised his hands immediately. "He's disarmed," he shouted, but the officers didn't look at the boy. They looked at Michael. "Get on the ground. Now." Confused, he complied, face to the pavement, knee to his back, cuffs tight on his wrists. One officer muttered, "Suspect detained." Another kicked the weapon away, but didn't look at the kid on the ground, now crying, restrained under Michael's knee. The principal arrived, breathless. "Wait, he's our security guard." But it was too late. News cameras were already there, catching the image. Michael, bloodied, handcuffed, surrounded by cops. The headlines were immediate. "Man subdues teen gunman." But was it excessive force? Hero or threat? Security guard uses violence in school incident. Sarah didn't answer his calls. When she finally did, her voice was cold. "I can't have Emily around you right now. I hope you understand." His job was suspended pending investigation. He was charged with use of excessive force resulting in injury to a minor. Michael sat alone in a holding cell that night, clothes stained, wrists raw. He replayed everything again and again. What could he have done differently? Should he have waited, hesitated? But he hadn't hesitated, and because of that, 3 kids were alive. Still, all he felt was shame. The public turned fast. Some called him a hero, others a danger. Talk shows debated his choices. Comment sections were cruel. "Just another violent vet," one said, "trying to play Rambo." He was released on bail but forbidden from going near the school or Emily. Paparazzi waited outside his apartment. Reporters knocked daily. His neighbors avoided eye contact. At night, the quiet was unbearable. The worst moment came when he found Emily's notebook in a box of old things. She had written a short story about a brave lion who protected the forest but was locked away by the other animals for being too scary. She drew him as the lion. Michael broke down for the first time since the arrest, not with anger, but with emptiness. Everything he had built, his quiet stability, his reputation, the fragile bridge back to his daughter, was gone, and he wasn't sure it would ever come back. If this moment made you feel something, anger, hope, heartbreak, don't keep it to yourself. Tap the like button and share in the comments what this story brings up for you. Your voice matters here. Someone out there might need to read exactly what you're feeling right now. The days blurred together. Michael barely left his apartment, shades drawn, phone off, no appetite. He sat in silence, not even the news playing in the background anymore. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every knock a potential summons, every shadow a reminder that the world didn't believe him. But one afternoon, a letter slipped under his door. No return address. Just a crayon drawing of a lion with a big scar across its face, and underneath in uneven handwriting, "You're still my hero. Love, Emily." Michael stared at it for what felt like hours. The drawing was folded around a short note. "Mom said I can't see you, but I don't care. I know what you did. I love you. Don't give up." He cried for the first time in weeks, not because of pain, but because someone still saw him, still believed in him. A few days later, while waiting at a legal aid office, he met a man named Jerome Carter, mid-50s, calm eyes, worn hands. Jerome had done 3 years for a crime he didn't commit. "The truth takes time," Jerome said, handing him a bottle of water. "But you gotta survive long enough to speak it." That stuck with Michael. The truth takes time, but silence is a killer. Jerome began to meet him weekly, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to sit in silence. "You're not broken," he said once. "You're bruised. There's a difference." Michael started writing again. At first, just notes in his old notebook. Then, full letters to Emily he never sent. Reflections, memories, thoughts. It was like stitching himself back together, one word at a time. One morning, he got up early and ran for the first time in months. The cold air hurt his lungs, but the pain was real, and real felt better than numb. He also picked up a book Jerome had recommended, Man's Search for Meaning. It wasn't magic, but it reminded him that suffering without purpose is what breaks people. If he could find purpose, even now, he might endure this. He started responding to online messages, sifting through the noise. One stood out. A woman whose son had been in the playground that day. She thanked him, said her son called him the brave man. She said, "Don't let this world change what's true." Bit by bit, Michael stopped seeing himself as a criminal. He wasn't perfect. He had flaws, but he had acted out of instinct, not hate. Out of love, not violence. And for the first time since the sirens, he felt like he had a voice again. The turning point came quietly. No courtroom drama, no breaking news. Just a phone call. "Mr. Reynolds, my name is Thomas Grant. I'm an attorney, and I believe you were wrongfully charged." Michael almost hung up. He'd had enough of strangers promising help, but something in Thomas's voice, firm, clear, calm, made him pause. "I've reviewed the footage," Thomas continued. "Someone leaked the security tapes to me. I saw what you did. You didn't attack anyone. You protected those children." Michael leaned against the kitchen counter, heart pounding. "Then why does everyone think I'm the monster?" "Because monsters make headlines. Heroes make people uncomfortable." From that moment, things began to shift. Slowly, unevenly, but they shifted. Thomas took on his case pro bono. He filed motions to gain access to all school surveillance footage. Michael watched some of the clips himself for the first time. He saw the moment he reached the children, the way he shielded them, the way he hesitated before charging the shooter. It wasn't rage, it was instinct. The video made it to a local journalist who still believed in nuance. She published a piece titled, "The Man Who Stood Between a Gun and a Child." It didn't go viral. Not at first, but it made waves in the right places. One teacher from the school sent him a message. "My daughter was one of the kids you saved. Thank you. I'm so sorry for how you've been treated." Another followed. "If I had to choose someone to protect my child again, I'd choose you. Every time." Michael still felt fragile, but those messages became his armor. He started walking every day, rain or shine, got back into his routines, meal prep, short runs, journaling. Jerome kept checking in, reminding him to stay grounded. "You're not fighting to be a hero," he said. "You're fighting to be seen." For the first time since the arrest, Michael spoke publicly. In a brief interview, he said, "I didn't act because I'm brave. I acted because those kids had no one else in that moment." The clip circulated fast. People began to question the charges. Petitions popped up. Teachers, parents, even some former military buddies voiced their support. The tide hadn't fully turned, but it was shifting. For the first time in months, Michael opened the blinds in his apartment. Light flooded the room. He wasn't free yet, but he wasn't invisible anymore. For every step forward, Michael felt a shadow waiting behind it. As support grew, so did resistance. The prosecutor refused to drop the charges. Use of excessive force, they insisted, regardless of intention. Their argument was clear. Michael wasn't law enforcement. He wasn't authorized to engage. He should have waited, they claimed. Let trained professionals intervene. Michael wanted to scream. There were no professionals there in those 10 seconds. Just him, 3 kids, and a boy with a gun. Still, doubt crept back in. What if he had waited? What if he had just shouted instead of lunging? Would the kid have lowered the weapon? Or would 3 children now be names carved into a memorial plaque? The uncertainty gnawed at him. Even with the videos, even with public support, the justice system moved like molasses. Court dates were delayed, paperwork dragged. He'd go weeks without updates. The silence was maddening. One morning, Michael broke. He sat in the hallway of his apartment building, back against the wall, staring at the door. He felt it again, that same hollowness from the night after his arrest. The feeling of being swallowed by something he couldn't name. He didn't answer calls, not even Jerome's. For 3 days, he disappeared into himself. It was a drawing that pulled him out. Another envelope, another lion. But this time, the lion had tears and was surrounded by little cubs. You protected them. I remember. They remember too. Emily hadn't forgotten, and if she still believed in him, maybe he could too. Michael showed up to his next meeting with Thomas with clearer eyes. I don't want this to be just about me, he said. We've seen what happens when people act out of fear. I want this to mean something. Thomas nodded. Then we'll make it mean something. They began preparing for trial. Michael practiced his testimony. Not just the facts, but his heart. The truth of that moment, the terror, the instinct, the humanity. It wasn't about sounding perfect, it was about being real. But the hardest part wasn't court. It was the nights when Emily didn't call, the weekends that passed without seeing her. The custody order still stood. Until he was cleared, he couldn't be near her. That was the wound that wouldn't close. Still, Michael held on. To his truth, to his daughter's voice. To the chance that someday all this pain might become something more than just pain. Something like justice. The courtroom was colder than Michael expected. Pale walls, too much echo, and a clock that ticked loud enough to measure every breath. He sat at the defense table, suit pressed, hands still. Across from him sat the prosecutor, sharp, confident, detached. And behind them, a handful of observers, parents, teachers, and Emily. She wasn't supposed to be there. Sarah had said she'd keep her away. But there she was, sitting quietly in the third row, clutching something in her lap. Michael swallowed hard. He couldn't break now. The trial moved slowly. Evidence was presented. Security footage played. Michael flinched, seeing himself on screen, charging, wrestling, pinning the boy. It looked violent. It looked dangerous. But it had saved lives. The prosecutor argued recklessness, claimed Michael had escalated the situation, that he took justice into his own hands, that he was trained to use force and should have known better. Then came the testimonies. The teacher whose students had been hiding in the hallway spoke first. Her voice trembled. If he hadn't stepped in, I don't want to think about what could have happened. Then a mother stood, Linda Myers. My son was one of the kids in the playground, she said, hand on her chest. When he came home, he didn't talk for days. Then one night he said, the big man saved me. I asked him what he meant. He said, he was like a wall that didn't let the bad thing reach me. Her voice cracked. My son is alive because Michael didn't wait. The prosecutor objected. Irrelevant, emotional. The judge allowed it. Finally, Michael took the stand. He didn't read from notes. He didn't rehearse. I didn't wake up that day wanting to be in this room, he began. I just wanted to do my job. Keep kids safe, that's it. He told them what he saw, how fast it happened, how little time there was to think, how the fear in the kids' eyes was the only thing he focused on. I didn't see a threat. I saw 3 children who needed someone, and I ran to them, not because I'm a hero, because I'm a father. Silence followed. The jury deliberated for hours. Each minute stretched like a rope about to snap. When they returned, Michael's heart pounded so loud he couldn't hear the clerk at first. Not guilty, just those 2 words. But they landed like thunder. Gasps echoed. Some wept. Thomas squeezed his shoulder. Michael didn't move. He just looked at Emily. She stood, held up the drawing she'd kept hidden in her lap. It was the lion again, only this time he was smiling. Michael exhaled. For the first time in months. Outside, reporters swarmed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Later that evening, away from cameras and crowds, Emily ran to him in the parking lot. She jumped into his arms. "I told everyone you were a hero," she whispered. Michael held her close, eyes shut, as if trying to memorize the moment. The weight of shame, fear, and doubt began to slip from his shoulders. He didn't need the world to call him anything. His daughter already knew who he was. And that was enough. Michael never imagined that doing the right thing could almost cost him everything. He had always believed that courage would be recognized, that integrity would protect him. But what he learned was harder to accept. Sometimes the world doesn't applaud bravery. Sometimes it punishes it. He learned that people are quick to judge what they don't understand, that headlines move faster than truth, and that silence, when combined with fear, can turn a protector into a suspect in the eyes of the public. But he also learned that even in the darkest moments, light can break through. A letter from a daughter, a lawyer who believed, a stranger who said, "Thank you." Those small pieces of humanity saved him more than any verdict ever could. Michael's story isn't just about justice. It's about endurance, about holding on to your truth when the world tells you to let go of it. It's about the strength it takes to keep standing, not because you're strong, but because you refuse to disappear. And most of all, it's about the quiet power of being seen, because being called a hero isn't what saved Michael. Being believed was. After the trial, Michael didn't return to the school. Not because he wasn't welcomed. He was. The principal even offered him his position back. But Michael knew his chapter there had ended. He needed something new. Something that turned pain into purpose. With the help of Thomas and a few community leaders, Michael launched a program called First Shield. Its mission was simple: train school staff and volunteers on crisis response, trauma awareness, and non-lethal protection methods. Not to turn schools into fortresses, but to empower the people inside them. He spoke at high schools, community centers, and town halls, not as a soldier, not as a security guard, as a man who had been misunderstood and who now understood the cost of being silent. Michael never asked to be a public figure, but stories like his don't stay quiet. Podcasts, news outlets, and even documentary crews reached out. He declined most of them. "If I'm going to speak," he told Thomas, "it has to be for something that matters." What mattered most, though, was Emily. The custody arrangement was amended. Slowly, Michael became part of her life again, not just in weekends or court documents, but in real, living moments. Picnics, science projects, bedtime stories. Emily once told him, "I don't care what they said, you're my safe place." That, more than anything, became his legacy. What would you have done in Michael's place? In a moment where seconds meant everything, would you have acted? Would you have waited? Would you have risked being misunderstood to protect someone else? Michael's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Doing the right thing doesn't always look clean. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with handcuffs, headlines, and judgment. But still, it's worth it. Because someone, somewhere, might be alive tomorrow because of a choice you made today. So now, we want to hear from you. Do you believe Michael was treated fairly? Should heroes have to prove their intentions after saving lives? Tell us in the comments. Share your thoughts, your emotions, your story. And if this video moved you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even tear up, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to believe that truth still matters. Because the world doesn't just need more heroes, it needs more people willing to understand them.